Morning, June. And I did see, I think I saw one other person was with us, but they're not video. Do you know who that is, Jesse?
Yeah, I think Rebecca Wood is, or she was here. She might be popping back in. She's a
Great.
board.
Okay. Well, Rebecca, if you can hear us, welcome. Good morning. It's nice to have you with us. And I think we were together with TJ yesterday, actually, right? So awesome. And maybe with Simon too. I can't remember if Rebecca was at Simon's session also, but I think maybe you were. So in any event, it's great to have you all with us. And wow, it's so nice to see people's faces and to feel your love and your presence this morning. So, and Jesse, thanks a million for including me in this. I'm really honored, and I've been very excited about this opportunity to talk about voices of the future and cultivating leadership independence and conducting skills in young choristers. So I think before we actually get started, I just want to share a little story and kind of imagine this with me. Imagine that you're here in this situation. So you've been invited to come and do a workshop or a clinic, if you will, with an ensemble, let's say a choir or whatever, in some faraway place, some other state, and they've flown you in, but you've brought your choir along as a demo, to do like a collaborative, workshop type thing. And this is a big deal. You're really excited about it. You're getting paid the big bucks or whatever. And the bus is pulling up to the venue. And just as you're literally arriving and you see your hosts, waving to you and, welcoming you, you just all of a sudden are overcome with this paralyzing anxiety or this terrible illness, and you just can't function. You're just stuck. You're like, I can't do this. I don't know what's wrong with me, but there's something terribly wrong with me. Okay. Unfortunately, this is an actual scenario that probably happens to so many of us in these, situations where it was we're, doing something where the stakes are high, and we're, then we sometimes do feel that paralysis. But, imagine that this really happened, and we're all of a sudden, in this place where we just need to stand and deliver, but we can't do it. So, what happens there? You've traveled all this way and you're just stuck. And literally for the next hour and a half, 2 hours, let's say, you are curled up in a little ball and you can't move. And after those 2 hours, the time is over, everybody goes home, and it's done. Sounds like a nightmare. Doesn't this pretty much sound like your worst? And sometimes we have that dream where you can't move, right? And you're you have this job interview or something, but you just can't, or you show up in your underwear or whatever it is, right? It's this horror story. Well, this really happened. Okay. So this actually played out. It was pretty much what I described. This was in Florida, and this was on a choir tour of the Elm City and United Girls Choirs. And so my colleague Rebecca, and it looks like, did Rebecca just join I just saw her name. I don't know if that's some imposter, if it's the artist formerly known as if that's really Rebecca. Welcome, Rebecca. I don't see you, but I think she's at the soccer field. So I'm guessing. Oh, there's another R. Look, we have the two mystery Rebeccas in the background, the two R's. Anyway, welcome to Rebecca's Far and Wide. I'm talking about you, Rebecca number 2, I'm sure you remember this story because you're the star of you're one of the protagonists in the story. So here's Rebecca. And unfortunately, we had been hosted by this wonderful, I won't say who it is to protect the innocent, but some folks had invited us, the choir group, to have a cookout at their place. And they brought out the, hamburgers. They were providing the, stuff, but they were like, hey, you guys can cook these yourself on the grill. So I look at the hamburger package and I'm like, these hamburgers, they expired a couple days ago. So this is not good, but what do you say to your host? Are you like, I'm not sure we can really eat these hamburgers because they're expired and I'm a little concerned about people. So you don't say that. You're just like, well, it's probably fine. What's the worst that happens? Cook it really well, cook it all the way through, whatever. So then, as it happens, the cooking of the burgers ends up in the hands of, I think maybe an 11 or 12-year-old or something. It's the grill person is one of the choristers, and they've never cooked a hamburger before, particularly. And I tell you, these hamburgers were not cooked all the way through. They were expired meat. And who has the weakest stomach on the entire tour bus? That would be Rebecca. So food poisoning, big time. Okay, big time. So here we are on the bus. We're pulling up to the place. Rebecca's like, I don't feel so good. I really don't feel so good. Oh, this is not good. This is not good. So she's curled up in the fetal position, and she's like, Tom, I can't do it. I can't conduct this, workshop with the South Florida Girls Choir or whatever it was. And so I'm like, oh no, what do we do? What do we do? And she's like, you can't do it either. I need you. I need you to stay with me. So I'm like, no problem, Rebecca. I'm by your side. It's fine. It's all going to work out just fine. So you know what happens? Not only did it work out fine, this was a watershed experience for us. This was a moment in my career, in my life up to this point, when I had one of those, this is why we do what we do, and why we do what we do the way we do it. And this is sort of the payoff. It's kind of like taking your chips to the window at the Foxwoods Casino and trading in the chips for the cash. Not that that's ever happened to any of us, but it was kind of a cashing in your chips moment. It was we're there, not we have arrived, but we're on to something here. This is worth, it is worth all the blood, the sweat, the tears, and the effort of doing things this way. And when I say doing things this way, I mean striving to make ourselves completely obsolete and completely dispensable. So we arrived at this place, and everything went so swimmingly well that I think Rebecca would agree with me. It probably went like maybe 100 times better than it would have gone with all due respect to Rebecca, than if Rebecca had just gotten up there and done her shtick, and she would have been great. But there was so much intangible magic, okay, that happened when Courtney Greifenberger, now I'm mentioning names. Okay, so Courtney Greifenberger was, for those of you who know Courtney, she was the president of the choir, and she was a very gifted musician and a wonderful leader and student conductor. But she had never done anything, like she was not prepared. She didn't even know what, she didn't have like the rehearsal plan, and Rebecca was in such a state she couldn't even be like, oh, Courtney, here, do this song and that song. And this. Courtney was going on zippo zilcho nothing. Courtney we showed up, and I don't even think we said, Courtney, you've got to run. I don't remember exactly how it shook down, but basically the idea is Courtney was like, okay, Rebecca is puking. Tom is, otherwise I could, all right, no problem. And she's like, hey guys, here we go. She gives everybody a pep talk. She gets everybody off the best. They're all professional. They're all lined up. She goes up. She says, hi, I'm Courtney. It's nice to meet you. We're so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting us. My colleague, Rebecca, is not actually going to be able to, I'm going to be leading the workshop. And they're like, okay, great. That's fine. You seem friendly enough, and whatever. And was she friendly? I mean, she knocked it out of the park. She hit a home run, a grand slam. She was charismatic. She was engaging. She was funny. She was musical. She challenged everybody. She got them involved. She got them up and moving and dancing and singing South African songs. And, she did us all proud. And, it was a team, and everybody was so behind her. The whole ensemble was right there. And the beauty of it was that, and this is what she kind of even said to us afterwards. She was like, that was not me up there. Any one of these any one of the members of the choir could have done exactly what I did. They would each do it in their own way and whatever. And she was one of the more, experienced student conductors, or I should just say conductors. But that's the truth. And when she said it, I knew it was true. And then I think she wrote a college essay about this or something. That's kind of part of what gelled the story in my mind, was that she was like, hey, read my essay. I wrote this essay about, that experience. And she was like, and everybody was like coming up to me, and they were just like, you're in high school? Like, where did you learn to conduct? And she was like, I didn't really learn to conduct. I'm in the choir. This is what we do. Like, it's just, this is part of our culture, is just that we're always, passing the baton, as it were, and saying, okay, all right, Courtney, jump up and conduct. And she'd been doing that since probably, practically the first day she joined the choir, because that's kind of the way we do it. So anyway, that little story, I think, illustrates what this session is about. But I will, can you all see my shared screen? Because I have some sort of notes here, some formal notes. And so, you've all read, I think, probably this description. Can a 9-year-old be a consummate musician and conductor? Is it ever possible for somebody so young to possess the necessary skills, knowledge, and maturity to provide effective leadership for a choral ensemble? Well, I think so. I do think so. And then, the rest of us, I don't need to read this. I want to kind of explicitly define what I mean by voices of the future, cultivating leadership, independence, and conducting skills in young choristers. Hopefully that story sort of illustrates it in a kind of anecdotal way or whatever, or just kind of gives you a sense of like why, I guess, like what we're after. That is sort of the why, so that we don't need to be in control, so that we don't need to be able to deliver the goods, because anybody can deliver the goods, because we're not the lead. We, when I say we, the conductors, the directors of the ensemble, are not the leaders. We are the leaders, meaning everybody is a leader, right? We're all here to be leaders, and we all are leaders, right? To be a leader just means to act leaderly, to step up to the plate and deliver the good, to do what needs to be done. And that's exactly what Courtney did. And, there are countless examples of this kind of, it has evolved. Our organization, the United Choir School, has evolved into a network of choirs directed by young people under the age of 18. And that, it's something that I feel very passionate about. I believe so much that age is not, does not need to be a sort of determining factor in whether somebody can provide effective leadership. And again, that's kind of the thesis that I present. Can a 9-year-old, be, and I know it's true, because I see it, day in, day out with these conductors. So there's the description. So why are we here? Part one, why are we here? Purpose and concepts. So that's always kind of the question that I start with. And I mean it in at least two ways. One is, why are we here today? What is the subject that we're here to talk about? What does this mean? Voices of the future, cultivating leadership. But then why are we here? Of course, on a bigger sense, like, why are we here on this planet? Why do we exist? Why do we as human beings, why is there such a thing as, life and the human condition? What is our purpose, our bigger purpose as creatures? Is that Beth? Hi, Beth. Hey, good morning, Beth. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. So you're just in time for the good part. Why are we here? So let me open it up and just imagine. That's what we just did. We just imagined that scenario. And I do think that so that Courtney Greifenberger, or, any Courtney Greifenberger of the present, past, or future, can step up to the plate and deliver the goods. So we don't have to, because, hate to be morbid, but, none of us is going to be here forever. And that we have this limited amount of time to leave a legacy. We have this limited amount of time to sing our song, to do our thing. And I really believe that maybe, perhaps more than anything else, our thing is actually our thing, right? It's not our thing, like my thing. I'm doing my thing. I'm doing our thing. Like, I'm just a conduit through which, generations past, mentors of mentors of mentors of mentors have passed down these ideas and these methods and these philosophies and these principles. And I'm just trying to pass them along, and I'm sure I put my unique spin on it. And each of you, each of us does that. And that is, I think, what the human journey is, like, taking what we can take and just giving back, constantly giving back, and recognizing our place in the circle of life and in the eternity that is, this human, the evolution of humanity and nature and the cosmos, the universe. So not to get abstract or anything. So voices of the future. I rambled, and just about all of you know this, but I'm really working hard to provide some structure here. So voices. So I need voices in three different ways. Musical voice, I think, is kind of the most literal, obvious way, the voice that makes music. But that's not just a singer's voice, your little voice. An instrumentalist has a voice too, the voice that sings as one, plays one's cello or one's, piano or organ or whatever it might be. The composer's voice, we often talk about, the voice of the composer. Is the composer's voice being heard? Is it speaking, through the music? So any musical voice, and certainly the conductor, has some conductors do actually use their voice as they sing. As June, we were talking about this just the other day, that this is kind of a quote unquote bad habit, that we sometimes fall into. And but the conductor's voice, I think, can be heard through, the music that's made in the ensemble, and is certainly heard singing in a literal sense, demonstrating as a singer in rehearsals, etc. So the extra musical voice, not in the musical realm, that would be the speaking voice and the writing voice. So your voice, when one uses words, as opposed to music, spoken and or written, to communicate information, express ideas, tell stories, etc. So pretty obvious, right? These are both pretty literal uses of the word voice. And then in the broadest and I would say, sort of most exciting way, what we mean by voice is the spiritual, philosophical, metaphysical, human soul voice, which is the figurative voice that sings the unique song that is an individual person's life. So you think about that, your life is a song, and the way you live your life, that's giving voice to that song, right? So you're singing your song through your actions, your words, your everything you do. The impact that a person has on the world, the ways in which they influence and inspire others during their lifetime, and the legacy that they leave for future generations. Et in secula seculorum, amen, etc. So there's that, that cycle. But that really, to me, is what we're talking about when we talk about voices of the future. Just the voices part, like that's what I mean by voice. All three of those: the musical, literal, the words, and then the voice of the future. These voices that hopefully will echo on in perpetuity, and re-echo our voices, the voice of each of us that lives a life, and then we're gone, and then the next generation and the next generation, and those voices, because we and it's so interesting in choral music, because we literally are singing those voices of those dead composers from hundreds of years, thousands of years ago. Their voice is still being heard, and we're giving voice to it with our music voice, and with our conductor voice, and our scholar voice, and all these different things, right? But also, anytime we read a book and we're inspired by that, a book, writing a book is a great way to have your voice continue on. But for those of us, probably most of us, who don't publish compositions, or who don't write a book during our lifetime, I think we are no less contributing to the future of of humankind, and the development of the sort of collective voice that we as a people, the human race, we have, in that what I said here, every way that we influence others, and every way that we impact the world, and make a difference in the world. So there we are. Now we've gotten through one word of 7 or 8. Okay. So of the future, why focus on the future rather than the present, right? Everybody talks about, live in the present moment, and and of course that's great advice. The way I see it as, voices of the future, I mean that in every generation, in every stage of one's life, and in every individual moment that ever occurs, the future is always the only thing left that anyone can influence. And it always begins right now with us. So the future begins right now. So this is not some abstract, maybe someday kind of future. Like maybe someday these voices of the future will, make a difference or whatever. This future is immediate and actionable. So we're talking about voices of the future in the present, and in the short-term, the very short-term future, like now, which wasn't now when I said, like, what I mean, like the next moment, like that if I say to Poopsie, who's 6 years old and just sat down for the first time in the choir rehearsal room, I say, you're a leader, and show us what you got, whatever. And maybe what she's got is to sit up a little straighter. Maybe that is what she has to offer. Maybe that is her voice right now. Maybe she can't even, maybe she's too scared or too shy or whatever to make any sound with her musical voice, or with her, even to say her name. Often we'll have a young chorister who comes in, or actually choristers, older choristers, any age, and they're just very self-conscious. They're very shy. They won't speak a word. And yet there are other ways that we can bring out the leadership within them, and that we can, invite them to be a leader, right? And to be the best that they can be in that moment, and then to set an example, and then hopefully to realize, hey, I am a leader. I am a leader, even though maybe I feel like I know nothing and I'm just here to follow, and I'm just here. No, you can set an example, because it's very simple. It's just be the best that you can be, in every way. It's not be the best of anybody in the room at singing that tritone. That's not what being the best that you can be. It means being the best that you can be, right? And whatever that is, only you own that, right? That is unique to you, being the best that you can be. It's not comparing yourself to everybody else and being, am I as good as, Susie over here who can sight read anything? All right. I'm looking at you, Rachel. Okay. Rachel is a very, very good sight reader. Okay. And she has some other talents too, but that is definitely something we all admire about Rachel. She can really spit out those notes. Okay. So we covered the future. Now let's talk about cultivating. I didn't write anything in cultivating, but it just means to it's like tilling the soil. It's to fostering. I looked up the Merriam-Webster definition, and it was something like to foster the growth of basically. So to make it was a great definition actually. Let's see, it's got to be here somewhere. No, I've lost it. It's gone. Now I've even lost my shared screen. Can you still see my shared screen? Oh, you can, but I can't. Isn't that interesting? 1 second, folks. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Now I can see it again. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. Cultivating, and I'm going to close up these toggle lists here so that we keep on track. Oh boy. Here's a big one. Okay. Leadership as I define it, it is essential. It is fundamental. It is universal, and it is seminal. It's why we're here. I believe that we all human beings are here on this earth to be leaders. Like that's our purpose, is to be leaders. Not some of us, not the few who end up in prominent positions and have the corner office and the staff of 100 and, they're the CEO and all that. No, every one of us is here for that simple reason, to be a leader. And what does that mean? Well, by definition, a leader is someone who embraces and practices the practice of leadership. All right, well, we're just going around in circles here, right? In other words, someone who acts in a leaderly way. We're here to practice leadership. Again, we haven't really quite defined, well, what does that mean to practice leadership? Well, I say the practice of leadership is simply the practice of, here it is in blue, being the best human being that one can be. That's what leadership is. Which means, to break it down just a little bit further, on a tactical level, treating everyone with loving kindness and respect. Or for those of us who prefer a little bit more colloquial way of putting it, don't be a jerk. So, I just really think it's that simple. I think leadership is that simple. If you're not a jerk, you're a leader. It's just, or a bully. You could say a jerk or a bully, right? And so it's so ironic because so much of the connotation, so many of the connotations that we have around leadership is like this idea of somebody who's really strong, just shows their strength and they boss people around and they tell people what to do and all these things. And it just ain't so. I mean, at least not in my experience. I have not responded to that kind of leadership with anything other than pushing back against it and being like, go jump in a lake. Like I don't want to follow your lead, because then I might turn out like you. And that is the last thing I want. Because whenever I see in myself some of those qualities of being like that, I'm like, that's not Tom the leader. That's Tom the bully. That's Tom the jerk. And Tom the jerk it's part of, there's a jerk inside each of us, right? There is a bully and it's just waiting to come out. And, bullying begets more bullying, right? Jerkiness begets more jerkiness. So we can get into that cycle of being jerky, more jerky, and then we just engage and we fight fire with fire. But leadership begets leadership, and empowerment begets empowerment, and kindness begets kindness, and love begets love. And so if we choose to live with those as our guiding principles, then we become that which we aspire to be just by aspiring to be. So treating everyone with kindness and respect, don't be a jerk. It should go without saying, but unfortunately, it clearly doesn't. On a strategic level, I would say that being the best human being that we can be, that is to say, the practice of leadership, means empowering individuals, both oneself and others, to embrace and practice the practice of leadership. So it just does take us around the circle. And as described above, that practice is simply, as defined up in blue, be the best that you can be, and so on infinitum. So it's just this cyclical thing. And I do see this philosophy of leadership as very meta. It's self-referential, it's organic, it's cyclical, just like the circle of life itself. It simply asserts that our highest purpose as human beings is to discover and fulfill our highest purpose as human beings, which of course is to discover and fulfill our highest purpose as human beings. I like to be, if you haven't figured this out by now, I like to be very explicit about this when working with a group of people, with individuals or groups of every age and every experience level, because I I just think it's of paramount importance. And if we don't start with that foundation in mind, it's very easy to get caught up in, as TJ Harper was saying yesterday, Jesse, in the and Rebecca in the his session about, he was talking about COVID times, rehearsal techniques and whatever. He was like, I could sit there and be like, all day, and it's getting the choir to do that exactly on the 32nd note or whatever, and like that would just like, it's this weird compulsion that I have to just like, I was like, yeah, go right on, TJ, I'm totally with you. Like I get that, I could spend like 2 hours on the first note of a song, like getting it exactly, just the way you like. But he was like, but yeah, you know what I mean? Like that's not really the whole story. That's not the whole picture. That's not. Anyway, where did that come from? Practice of leadership. Oh, it's very meta. Oh, that's not our highest purpose. Yeah. That's right. That T, that T, as much as we might love it, and as much as we might want to really get it right, that is not our highest purpose. That our highest purpose is just so simple. It's right there. It's in all the wisdom literature. It's the golden rule. It's, love, however love, just treat everybody, treat your neighbor as you would like to be treated, be kind and loving and all that. The leadership journey is obviously it's unique. It's different for everyone. It's just as unique as we are. And yet it is all sort of the same. To me, it's just all about being the best that you can be, but that looks different for different people. Leaders love and affirm everyone. Leaders say, you matter. And that's a you singular primarily. It's also a you plural. It's also a collective we, we matter, right? But first and foremost, I am so, I feel so strongly about this individual business and about looking somebody in the eye. Those of you who have sung in a choir with me prior to Zoom, when I cannot invade your personal space, literally, that I'm I probably to a fault, really into kind of getting in your face and being like, all right, we can do this. Let's do this. Like you matter, and that's the message I'm trying to send. Not, you should be scared of me because I might hurt you, but sometimes people interpret that way. But what it really means, especially with the pandemic beard, I understand. I do look, ominous and threatening, but it's, it's like, hey, we're part of the same thing here. We're working together. We're a team, and I ain't gonna give up because I believe in you. I know that you can, do whatever. I know you can be the best you can be. And part of my job I see as a leader, and part of anyone's job as a leader, I see as just seeking out that potential, seeing the potential inside and coaxing it out and encourage and being like, it's there. You can do this. You can do it. And that's one of the most important things I think we do, is just to preach that message of, you've got infinite potential inside you. You can do it, let's go. Let's do this. And then balancing that, of course, with sensitivity and compassion and understanding that sometimes people aren't going to get that tritone, like today or maybe ever. And that's okay. They can still strive for it and they don't get it. And that's okay. All right, let's move on to something else, but that doesn't mean that there's not infinite potential in you. It just means that the tritone ain't your gig. And that's okay. You know what I mean? So, and that's fine. Okay. Leadership. And there is a reason why leadership is kind of at the top of the pyramid in my world, that it's voice of the future, cultivating leadership, then independence, then conducting skills in young courses. They're all important, but if you don't lay the foundation of the leadership, it's like, I don't see there being any point, and it's really not possible to get to the other stuff. So independence, self-sufficiency, autonomy, creativity, entrepreneurship, the ability to fly solo without a map and without any training, being a leader of leaders. So you're just out there in the desert. Nobody's told you what to do. You can't look to your leader to be like, oh, leader, tell me, what should I do now? What does that next note sound like? Or should I do a crescendo there? Or should I get softer? Or, Courtney, right? Rebecca, what song should I do with the choir that we're collaborating with? No, Rebecca is, literally puking her guts out, at this moment. So there's not, she's not going to answer you, you're not going to, if you hear a response, it's not going to look good. It's not going to smell good. Like you don't even want to talk to Rebecca right now. You just go in there and you just figure it out. And what do I think Courtney probably did? She probably polled her peers. She probably said, what do you guys think we should do? So she gave away her quote unquote power, the power that she had sort of unknowingly or unexpectedly inherited by, de facto. Right. And she gave it away. As soon as she had it, she gave it away. She said, all right, this isn't really my problem. Just like it wasn't Rebecca's problem. Rebecca had other fish to fry. You know, she had to get, you know, the poison out of her, you know, intestines, out of her stomach. You know, she had to get that out. Oh, that was unnecessary. I'm sorry. Hope nobody's trying to eat breakfast right now. So Courtney, she just intuitively at that point, she was just like, all right, right, and embraced the opportunity to you know, collaborate. So that's what independence is, being a leader of leaders. In a musical context, I would say fluency, and I see two parts of fluency: accurate, you know, that you can accurately, you know, you can pick up the score and you can, you know, you don't need somebody to play the part on the piano. You don't need to go over and plunk out the notes for yourself. You don't need to, like, heaven forbid, listen to the recording. Right. No, I'm sort of teasing. And TJ talked about this a little bit too yesterday, that like recordings are not the enemy. You know, it's wonderful to listen to a really nice polished recording, whatever. But if that's the way that we quote unquote learn our music, or if that's the way we sort of choose an interpretation for music, I don't say it's cheating, but it's depriving ourselves of, I think, the joy and the privilege and the blessing of engaging with the music for ourselves and owning it from start to finish, and sort of looking at the score and then turning what we see in the notation into music, because the, you know, the piece of paper is not obviously, it's not the music, right? It's just a representation. And so and actually that's what I talk about here in this next paragraph, reading between the lines. The analogy I use is that for a conductor or a singer, the information in the score is like the ingredients and basic instructions that any chef can find in a recipe book, right? So it says, you know, saute the onions for 3 minutes, and then, you know, add some spice, you know, add the paprika or whatever, you know, and then be sure to braise the, you know, whatever. And you need exactly half a teaspoon of, you know, vanilla extract. And the interpretive and expressive elements that are not shown in the score are like the nuanced preparation techniques that a great chef uses to produce an artful and unique dish. So anybody can follow the directions in the Betty Crocker cookbook and you know, do the chicken cordon bleu or whatever it is, but only a real artiste of a chef can come up with something that everybody's like, bellissimo, not bellissimo. What would be delicioso, something like that. I don't know. My Italian is almost non-existent, but yeah, like a white tablecloth, you know, chef, like a real, like when you're like, oh man, you know, when you go to a restaurant and you have something that's really special and you're just like, oh, the subtlety of these flavors. I mean, this is not, man, if only I could cook like this at home, you know, and that's what we're talking about. That's, in terms of artistry, I think that's where we want to get to. So like being able to sight sing, again, with all due respect to Rachel's incredible sight singing chops, just the beginning of the story, right? Without those sight singing chops, we're in trouble, right? Because if you can't find the vanilla extract in the fridge, right? Or if you don't have, you know, the appropriate type of, you know, collard green in your, you know, in your vegetable, you know, if you can't figure it out, if you're like, oh, I don't know what this says because I don't read this language, you know, this cookbook is in Swahili and I don't read that, you know, whatever. Like, so obviously we need, I think it is important to have those, you know, the very literal decoding skills of accurate sight singing and all that. But then there's also, and that's what I see as fluency, is both of those, and to be able to do it, you know, spontaneously, you know, on the fly. I've never seen this thing before, but I'm just gonna. Of course, it's great to study, but often we don't have that luxury, and often we're in a situation where, and really, I think we should be always seeing and looking at a score and experiencing a piece of music afresh every time. So it really is looking with fresh eyes, not having like had it drilled into our head like this is the way to make the music happen. This is the way it sounds. This is what my part sounds like. And this is where we put the crescendo. It's like I'm creating this in the moment, you know, and I'm deciding. And the way I did it yesterday might not be the same as the way I do it today because of that thing I saw last night that changed who I am, you know, changed like the way what this piece means to me, or you know, contextually, because we're constantly evolving. So and then of course in the extra musical context, when I say independence, I mean the ability to self-direct with grace and aplomb. I just use that word because I had to have like one fancy word in my presentation, because everybody's got to have one fancy word in there. But I do like that word because it's got those kind of like snobbish connotations or whatever. But it really, you kind of get the idea, like with aplomb, dignity and excellence and just grace, I think, is enough. So to self-direct, not just to be able to, I'm to decide what I should do now, but to do so in a way that's really like a class act, right? Even, and perhaps especially, in unfamiliar situations. That's where the independence comes in. You could be a leader and do the right thing when you know what that thing is and when you've practiced it, and or when you can be like, I'm Rebecca, where should we go now? Right. And Rebecca's like, okay, well, we're going to go backstage to the green room and we're going to warm up there. And, okay, well, what should we do as the warm up? Well, let's do a couple of Bumblebee on My Knees. That's all fine. And you can be a leader and you can go, okay, everybody line up. We're going to go into the green room and then we're going to sing on Bumblebee on My Knee. But if you can just be like, I see that Rebecca is, talking to the sound engineer right now, and it's 7:30 and the concert starts in. It's time for us to hey, everybody, we're going to go into the round room and we'll warm up. And then, okay, I think Bumblebee on My Ear. What do you guys think? What should we do? What would really help us to be the best that we can be right now as we prepare for this important program? And we know Rebecca's stressed out. She's not going to be able to warm us up because she's got other things to do right now. What should we do? Right. So, extra musical, the ability to self-direct with grace and aplomb, even in unfamiliar situations, to determine what needs to be done and do it when there's no playbook. Including and notably when on one's personal journey towards self-knowledge and self-actualization. So this takes it back to a really philosophical kind of level of like figuring out what my highest purpose is, figuring out like who I am and like why I'm here, and like to be able to do that without reading some book and somebody tells you, well, this is the meaning of life, or to call up Leah and be like, Leah, I need some spiritual counseling. You got to help me out with this one. I'd say, and trust me, if you need spiritual counseling, Leah is your Leah is your go-to. Okay, she will help. And yet, when Leah doesn't have any internet service and you're having that existential crisis, and you can't get to, sometimes Leah's out for a run, and if she's out for a run, that cell phone is nowhere to be found. Or maybe it's tracking her miles, but she's not going to pick it up and talk to you no matter, so she's not going to hear the phone ring till later. So you got to figure out for yourself. And that to me is what independence is. So conducting skills, this is sort of to me, the nitty gritty, the boring part in a way, but it's the technical aspects of the craft. I shouldn't say boring, but just sort of obvious, almost self-evident, right? The craft of conducting, or any other field for that matter. So we could easily plug in Voices of the Future, Cultivating Leadership, Independence, and singing skills in young choristers, or Voices of the Future, Cultivating Leadership, Independence, and Plumbing Skills in Young Choristers. And then there would be that, all of these, the leadership and the independence would be there. And then sort of that instead of conducting, it would just be, how to repair the toilet, or whatever it might be, that there is a craft that we're talking about. And it's the things that are typically taught in school. June and I were discussing this the other day a little bit about how there's so much that we don't learn in school, that just because that's not what school does for it. Just isn't, I don't know, for any number of reasons, which is a whole other session, I suppose. But it's, gesture beat patterns, rehearsal techniques, choral literature, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And then young choristers, because time is fleeting. Young choristers, the simple definition of young choristers is choral singers under age 18. Okay, great. And the broader is all living human beings. So whether, a figurative chorister in the choir, it's like any of us singing our song in life, any age, it doesn't matter. I see this stuff as all really universal. My particular bent and our particular sort of niche within United Choir School and within my life's work, the focus of it has been on members of a choir that are under age 18, and it's been conducting. But I see this as sort of applicable to any field with any group of people. Okay, I'm going to skip most of this stuff because I'm just going to kind of allude to it. But an OSM, who can define an OSM for us? I know many of you we've talked about these before. This comes from a book called The Radical Leap by Steve Farber, and I will see if I can pull that up here in case anybody's interested. It's one of my recommended reads. So The Radical Leap right here by Steve Farber introduced me to this concept of the OSM. So who can chime in and describe that for us? What's an OSM? What does that stand for? And you can soften it if you want to do the PG-13. Leah, should we cut right to you, or I want to hear the sound of your voice there, Leah. Are you with us?
I am with you, Tom, though I'm not sure if
Oh, you don't remember? Okay. Or maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe I read Steve Farber after you were already off at St. Olaf. Is that possible?
It's possible. It's also
All right.
possible, and in my
That,
old age, my memory is just
that your memory is fading in your golden years here. Okay, that's fine. One of the things I love about Leah, so many things to love about Leah, but you know, Leah's really, she's really honest and to the point. She's such a leader. She's like, I have no idea. You know, she's always been like that, very direct. You know, if you ask her questions, she doesn't know. She'll just say, I don't know. It's so wonderful. You know, as opposed to most of us, at least I'll speak for myself, where I'll just start spouting out, you know, I'll try to explain anything unrelated and, you know, hope it works. Okay, Rachel, are you familiar with this OSM concept?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Fill us in. Yeah, what's that?
I'm gonna, not take the PG-13 route.
Go for it.
And I'm just gonna say it. I think in the book it's defined. I haven't read the book, but I remember you talking about this term as an oh shit moment.
It's an oh shit moment.
Where
Yeah, exactly.
anytime something unexpected occurs and you are forced to think on your feet.
Exactly. So I read this book and I was just like, yeah, that is so true. This idea of spontaneity, you know, being able to, and to embrace that burn, you know, to be able to say, oh man, this is an OSM, you know, it was an OSM when Rebecca had the food poisoning. But what did Courtney do? She just went for it. She didn't even think about it. It wasn't even like a thought. Anyway, I do recommend the book. You know, I like to talk about how, you know, all of us have those moments, and that it's an opportunity to define ourselves really, and to show as leaders who we are as leaders, is to be like, yeah, this is so exciting. It's exhilarating. It's terrifying, but it also is an opportunity to kind of show what you're made of, and to step up and face the unknown, and know that you might fail, that you might die. I mean, that's where it kind of comes from. He has analogies to sports and bungee jumping, and, you know, going down a skateboard on your, you know, face down a really long hill, and all these kinds of, surfing is the big one in that book, because at any moment, you know, a shark could come and eat you, or you could get, you know, swept under the current and drown. But that's why surfers come back for it, is because you're on the edge. You're right on the edge. And leadership is one of the great extreme sports in life. You know, there's nothing like it. And, you know, and life itself, of course, is an extreme sport, because we have tragedies that suddenly we cannot handle, and we just don't know how we're going to do it. But we face the music, and we get through it, you know, and that's what humanity is. It's resiliency, you know, it's pure resiliency. And leadership is just another word for humanity at its best, I think. So Bertelow's 5 Wheels of Successful Sightseeing. You just got to give a shout out to this book. It's very quick read. It's very simple. And you know, if you can get past the tone, which is kind of dated and a little bit odd, the wisdom in there is incredible. And I remember reading this book when I was like 19 or 20, and just being like, this is it. This is the book that I wanted to write, you know, in my life. Like, this is what I believe, you know, it's all about the importance of cultivating independence and sightseeing skills, and kind of how to do it, and the individual accountability. And yeah, it's just really great book that ties right into, and was very, very seminal in sort of the conceptualization and actualization of, you know, what we do with it. It kind of morphed from sightseeing into leadership, into conducting, into you know, just that, you know, that's kind of what our goals are, is independence and all these things we're talking about. So finding balance, you know, that leadership is both very simple and very complex. It's really nuanced, but at its essence, it's just this idea of being the best you can be. I just got a few of these kind of things that seem to contrast, but, you know, loving and nurturing oneself and others, but also demanding a lot. So those things seem contradictory, and yet I think finding that balance and doing both, that balance is not the same as moderation. So it doesn't mean love and nurture yourself, but not too much, you know, be a jerk, like, enough to balance that out, or be demanding, but not too demanding, because you always want to love and nurture. I think that a balance can be both at extremes. I think you can be extremely demanding and also extremely nurturing and loving. And that is what has inspired me most. You know, it's those teachers that I just knew they loved me. I just knew there was no question that their love was unconditional. And yet I also knew that you know, they were going to have my ass on a platter if I didn't like prepare for that, whatever that was. That's Mr. Cobb. My ninth grade Latin teacher was terrifying, and yet like my favorite person. You know, he was just so inspiring and so kind, and you knew that he cared about you as a person. And you know, June Hale, you know, is like, you know, that's how June operates. Is, you know, no, that's not good enough. You know, it's just calling people out and pushing them to be their best. I've never seen an elementary school where every child can sing so beautifully, and they all can. It's like they can all get that octave. It's like, how do we pick which ones get into the choir, because they can all sing happy birthday. June, how do you do this? You know. And it's that, you know, that iron fist, but how do you put it, June? It's the king size candy bar and the iron fist, something. It's just balance. I don't know. What's the secret, June, to that balance? You got to unmute there, June, so we can hear you. Still can't hear you, June. You work on that. We'll come back to you. Keep on trying to unmute and see if you can figure out how to do it. Oh,
there it is.
Are you there? Okay, awesome.
Yeah. Well, I'm just very impressed with what you're saying, and that's the way. I guess you can't take no for an answer, because you know no is not in anybody's vocabulary. If you search hard enough, it's there, and everybody can do it. And if you don't think they can do it, it's your own personal problem. It's not their problem.
That's taking ownership for everyone's quote unquote problem. It's like everyone's problem is everyone, you know, it's my problem. Like I'm here, I'm a leader. That's what a leader does. I solve it. I find that nugget within you and I coax it out, and I recognize it and I say it's there. And, you know, yeah. June, you're just, you're one of those people who you know, changes the world. In inestimable ways, through, you know, the inspiration and the kindness and the love, coupled with, you know, the demanding and the like, nope, not going to take no for an answer from you or anyone. You know, we're going to get this done. You know, and Walden Moore. I mean, you know, he was the, you know, really my first, you know, my first real sort of mentor as a musical and personal and leadership sort of mentor. And he's just the nicest person. You know, he's just so authentic and so, you know, genuine in his care for everyone, and so respectful and so kind. And yet, boy, you better pay attention if you're in Walden's rehearsal, because if he catches you staring out the window, boy, you are gonna, you know. So that I was very lucky. I was in the right place at the right time to be able to learn and grow under the tutelage of people like Walden and June. Holding people accountable versus cutting them some slack, compliance and respect for the rules versus dissension and rebellion. I think both of these things, you know, in the extreme, they're great. Structure and boundaries versus freedom and creativity. I love the freedom and the creativity, as you can tell. But the structure and boundaries are important too. Taking control and speaking up versus relinquishing control and letting go and listening. Confidence versus humility, you know, is another big one. We need both of these things, probably in pretty big doses, right? But we need both of them to balance. And then independence, I just put this one example in the musical realm of, you know, the literacy and the sight singing versus improvisation and oral imitative rote learning, the ability to just kind of pick up without the notation. You know, that's for some of us who are very, very like, I read the music and, you know, it's that note and that's a B flat, you know, whatever. Like, it's hard when it's just like, all right, sing something. You know, I struggle with improvisation, not as much at the piano, but, you know, vocally, because, you know, so, but anyway, I think that creating a balance is, you know, a wonderful goal to aspire to. And then in conducting specifically, just, you know, precision, clarity, you know, precision versus expressivity, you know, being like showing where it is versus like showing the gestalt of it, clarity, you know, similar, versus abandon, just letting it, you know, letting it go. I guess more from not so much technical conducting, but like a rehearsal technique or like creating the chorister experience, if you will, you know, making it fun versus making it challenging, you know, those two things, you know, let's make it really, really fun, but gosh darn it, let's also make it really, really challenging. Those things are not mutually exclusive and they're not at odds with one another. You know, that you can do both in huge, you know, to a huge degree all the time if you're really on your game. Like Beth, when Beth is on her game, It's fun, and it's also really hard work. And somewhat awkward, probably. Right, Beth? All good things, right? Because if there's one thing that every human being is, it's awkward. And so if we can embrace that awkwardness, we are golden. We're just like, yeah, I'm such an awkward person. Are you awkward? Raise your hand if you're awkward. And everybody's like, oh yeah, well, I'm all, yes, Rachel, yes, I love it. Yeah, we're all awkward, right? And then you've done June, and we name the beast, and then we're like, oh, we're all awkward. This is great. We're all the same inside. It's okay. You can be awkward here. You're safe. You know, that sort of thing. Overall philosophy, I'm just gonna have to again skip this because we have 9 minutes left to get some real conversation going here. But creating a special subculture, dignity, professionalism, kindness, love, empathy, support. The fallacies of preparation and memorization. I'm not going to talk about that. Basically, what I mean is that, you know, preparation and memorization are good, but they're not all there is. And that there's this kind of conventional wisdom that says that if you prepare enough and you memorize your score and you know everything there is to know, that then, you know, you're in great shape. And I sort of say there's a corollary to that, which is all of that is fine, but something's going to not go the way you expect. And so what I would add to this idea that, you know, preparing and memorizing is good is that it's also good to expect the unexpected, to be prepared for not being prepared, and just to be able to fly by the seat of your pants in any situation. Other stuff, you know, I sort of talked about this. Well, no, I didn't specifically talk about this. My primary goal is not to present the most polished performance possible. Rather, I view serviceable performance as simply a welcome byproduct of skill building process, which is the primary goal or product. I believe that the extent to which an individual realizes their potential with regard to leadership, independence, and conducting skills is the extent to which the person realizes their potential as a chorister and musician. Yeah, I mean, there's other ideas in here. I'll be happy to send any of this to anybody that really cares to read about my like stream of consciousness here, which is kind of what this is. The leadership lens, it reveals the counterintuitive as opposed to the self-evident. Okay, I guess I should probably read this little part. This entire manifesto is based on the following belief: that there's tremendous untapped potential within every human being, and that a leader's job is to look through their leadership lens, to recognize it, tap into it, and draw it out. I've sort of talked about that. Yeah, okay. And we I just talked about this basically, that in the ideal world, the school kind of prepares us for that ideal world scenario. We're conducting, you know, a sophisticated collegiate or professional ensemble, but I feel that it did a very poor job of preparing me or students for the challenges of more realistic scenarios, like working with unskilled or inexperienced amateur singers. And so I don't know why I put this in here, but anyway, it's there. I guess it's there because I feel like there's a lot in leadership that is, again, not taught in school. And some of those things are like, you know, the real world, like what's it really like in the real world? It's great to be able to like get up there and conduct a Bach cantata with a bunch of people who know what they're doing and be like, oh yes, I think we should have a little more E in that umlaut of the, you know, that's great. And it's valuable and it matters, right? Especially in certain situations. But like, the last time I was working on an umlaut vowel in some German piece was, well, actually I did do a German piece not that long ago, but you get what I'm saying. They're like, it's not, it just, there's other stuff, you know, there's other stuff that isn't this ivory tower stuff. So anyway, I do have a couple of analogies in there, but the how can we do this is the discussion. And it's just Abraham Lincoln said, sharpen the axe, you know, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I'll spend the first 4 hours, you know, sharpening the axe. So that's what we do. Just keep going back and asking these same questions. And then we've got the simple, you know, the questions for discussion. So with 5 minutes remaining, I'm going to pass the baton, as it were, and try to practice what I preach here, having not done that yet, because I've just been rambling. But so what are the challenges and rewards of relinquishing control to less experienced singers? Who wants to take that one? What are the challenges and rewards? Or you could do challenges or rewards. Or you could answer the second. You know what? Let's just do it this way. We've only got a couple minutes left. So what we'll say is speak to any of these questions or anything else that I've spewed out in the past 56 minutes. Anything that comments, questions, conversation about this stuff. I purposely put in that really edgy question at the end about the conflict, dissension, jealousy, resentment, all that stuff. Because I feel like that's kind of the OSM, right? That's sort of that uncomfortable place. And then, you know, the safe space before that, and this big process versus product, and the business about, you know, we're not here to put on a concert and have the music be perfect. We're here with a simple goal of helping to foster, you know, to cultivate, to do the very thing, right? To cultivate leadership independence and some sort of skills, but primarily leadership and independence, and within whatever it is. If it's just singers, singers. But I really see the conducting skills as beneficial to, people who not necessarily be a conductor. They might just be a singer their whole life, or they might be a CEO, or they might be a receptionist, or they might be a wait person at a restaurant. I mean, whatever you do, the leadership and the independence, I think are key, and the skills that one can learn when learning conducting skills can be transferred. So questions, comments, let's see, who hasn't had a turn yet, right? We've heard at least a quick utterance from Beth. Have we heard from you, Beth? I've not given you a chance to get a word in edgewise, so go ahead. Beth.
I'm Rebecca.
What's that?
I'm Rebecca.
Oh, you're Rebecca. So it's not Rebecca. All this time I was thinking Rebecca's hiding in that R, but you're Rebecca.
Well, maybe that's also her. That is possible that it is.
No, that's another Rebecca. That's Rebecca Wood.
Oh,
she's
no.
someone that Jesse knows, I think, in Vermont. So you're Rebecca. You're the real Rebecca. You are the artist. Okay,
yeah.
so go ahead, Beth. What are your thoughts about it?
That I'm Rebecca.
I do.
That's a lot.
Sorry.
No, I know, but I feel like I could talk about any of the things.
Which one are you most passionate about? Which one just jumps out at you?
Well, I guess I can do the first one because I am implementing these kind of things, well, all the time. And so I think I can speak to the challenges and rewards. I think that there are many more rewards and many less challenges to giving up control than I make up in my head. Like, I'm like, oh no, that's not gonna work. I can't just let a 9-year-old take rehearsal for 5 minutes and just sit here. But there are many more rewards than you might think. And it becomes second nature. It becomes, it easily becomes like, why would you ever do it any other way? Like, why would I ever do something that the 9-year-old could do instead? Because she's going to gain so much more. I'm going to gain so much more. The choir is going to gain so much more. So what am I doing up there flailing my arms around when I could be enriching someone else? That was very dumb.
No, thank you. That was eloquent. That was beautifully put. And and I think you alluded to this normalized business, the culture of student leadership too, as being normalized and embraced of just like, this is the way we do it. And so it's been kind of normalized for you, I think, right? So you just go into rehearsal and you're like, yeah, of course, yeah, absolutely. Poopsie's going to take charge today,
Why would I ever lead warm-up?
Why would I lead rehearsal? Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So Jesse, it is 11:58 now. So I'm just do we have a real hard stop at 12 or can we buy an extra 5 or 10 minutes or how does that work?
Yeah, we could do, there's no lecture after this, so we can buy a few minutes after that.
Oh, well, I'm not trying to, I know people have places to go and things other than, the meaning of life to ponder here. So, but I really could talk about this, not even all day. I just could, this to me is like, this is why we're here. It's very personal. It's very, it's why I get up in the morning and do what I do. And I think that's probably true for all of us on this screen. I think, isn't that why we do whatever it is that we do? And a lot of us are sort of in the music, music education, choral, field or whatever. Rebecca, I assume you are, because I know you were talking about that I think you said you're a teacher and a music educator and a singer. And
yeah, I am. And this was great. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
I love being a leader is just being the best person you can be.
It's so simple, right? Yeah. And I know, of course, June is musician and teacher extraordinaire, and Leah is in a little bit of a different place right now, but still has a hand in the musical. I know with some choral things that you're doing, right, Leah?
That's right, Tom. I've been really lucky to still have an opportunity to sing with the Evensong group over at Duke Chapel, and I really appreciated in this pretty unpredictable and unconventional year, just really fostering a keen ear to listen to a lot of recordings and take away, not necessarily in pursuit of learning apart, but challenging sort of what do we like from this recording that when we come back in person, we'd love to integrate or sort of stretch ourselves to realize, and that maybe we didn't, we weren't holding ourselves accountable, or we weren't believing that we could achieve such artistry. I think maybe that's a more specific example to just these bullets, which I interpret sort of in that sort of meta, why are we here? How are we constantly evolving our leadership, is this sense of dismantling any preconceived notions or even expectations or limitations for oneself, and saying, okay, is it that I'm challenged by maybe relinquishing control because I've sort of come into this space believing that, that's an unrealistic or unconceivable thing. And so for me, that's actually making me as the individual be a better leader, but then also empowering that individual to realize I guess more broadened or deeper sense of their own personal leadership and journey. And in so many respects, I mean, that just becomes an incredible reward for you personally, but then also that individual and then the collective we, because they're reaping the example of this new leader, this fresh energy, as well as maybe witness a moment where they're seeing you as maybe this defined leader being stretched and being challenged, but then also relinquishing that sense of challenge or notion. So
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, beautiful. And yeah, feel free to, people are emojiing and things, and that's great. In the chat too, if there's some, brilliant insight that lends itself to, typing in, feel free. So, we should wrap up, I think, within the next few minutes, but I'd love to, anybody who hasn't had a chance to wax, please do. I feel, I feel like I so often feel of like, verbal diarrhea, and I just, kind of go on and on and on about these things. And I want to listen more. Because
one thing that I'd be interested in hearing from folks that are working with, I feel like it's so easy for me to be like, because I work for the United Choir School, and that's how this has been structured my whole life, and it's built to work this way, and and I grew up in the circle, so it's so easy to keep the ball rolling. But I would be interested to hearing how people that are working with older older singers and professional singers, how they're implementing, or how they would like to implement things like this when working with professional singers or college age singers that haven't, been sort of in this modeled cycle for their whole lives.
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I know we do have some conductors of those older. I mean, I know, Jesse, you've got your semi-professional group of adults, and Rachel is working with college, numerous college ensembles right now. And June certainly has worked with all ages and groups and whatnot, and Leah also. And Rebecca, I don't know much about your background, but I know at least that you sing in Vermont Choral Artists, so you're at least familiar from that standpoint. So, who has something to throw toward Beth on this one?
I think. Oh yeah, sorry. Did someone want to jump in?
No, please jump in. I think Rachel. I can see in Rachel's eyes that she's got something to say, but you go ahead too. Yeah.
So feel free to interrupt. You can talk here, but I was just gonna say, actually, just as an independent thought, which I think kind of links into this really well, is that like Beth, it's like, we kind of grew up in this, and Tom, you've been saying this, and I remember, like, there was one particular instance that sticks out in my memory. It was, I was TAing for, I think it was like North Haven one time, and it was during a parent, like they come and they watch the choristers perform like 2 or 3 pieces or something. And I remember you sat everybody down on the steps, and gave this huge talk about, is it about the music or is it about being the best person you can be? And choristers would raise their hand and be like, oh, it's about the music. And you challenge them and you say, are you sure? Because really, I think it might be about being the best person you can be. So at a young age, you've helped inspire, I think, just a different mindset in the way that we approach not just music, but about just being truly authentic and being ourselves. And yes, leadership is such a huge component, but I think too what you're doing and this model that you've created kind of just helps people kind of feel like they can be themselves and they can use aspects of leadership, and to like kind of pivot that into a more academic setting. It doesn't matter how young or how old they are, people appreciate that kind of rawness and authenticity, and they're like, oh well, this conductor is being this way, they're allowing me to just kind of be in this space. I've never sung in a choir before, and I feel like I can just come in here and just be myself. And I think that's just so important, and you've always preached that. That's something that has always been something that you've presented in all of your choirs, and it's really inspiring after all these years to still hear that, and to hear that be such a monumental and kind of pivotal figure in and what we're doing. Because I think that's the joy of doing art and doing music, is to have that sense. So I don't know if that really answered your question, Beth, but I just found that relationship to be there.
Thank you, Jessie. That's so beautifully put. And I'm just so proud of all that you're doing with this project as just one of so many examples of you putting yourself out there, finding your voice and being like, this is what I got to say, yeah, that is why we're here. And I both apologize and acknowledge that, if I'm that little voice that's there, that's calling out to you, that's always on your shoulder, or one of the voices, of course. You've had so many incredible mentors in, the different schools you've been to and the different programs, the workshops and whatever. It's just, it's fantastic. I mean, that's how we broaden ourselves and add layers to our skin. But I have that voice too, that voice is Walden Moore, and it's June Hale, but the first voice, that really imprinted it for me was Walden, so Walden is there because in my, I was like 10 or something, when Walden came to New Haven and started directing the choir. And like, that was he didn't put it quite the same way. It's like, again, we're different. They have different styles and different leaders and whatever. And that was in the context of a church choir program. And so there was, there was some religious and, certainly spiritual, overtones to the whole experience. And it was, in service of God and providing this music for worship. And that was kind of at the core of our purpose. But there was definitely this very, very, very humanistic element that was, if you will, chorister centered, I guess would be the sort of buzz, the catchphrase, the way to put it, chorister centered. Walden was there not to, necessarily produce. I mean, he plays the organ like nobody's business, these amazing hymns, harmonizations and descants and, just raising the roof with this awesome, awesome music on Sunday mornings. But that wasn't really the gold, that wasn't really that was important, but not as important. And this was so clear, even if it wasn't explicitly put in this way, it was so clear that what it was really about was the development of the human beings, in that choir. And that's what that was his job. His job was to do this exact thing, to make himself, and he did say this sometimes, to make myself obsolete, as long as you need me, I haven't done my job well enough. The moment you stop needing me, that's when I know I've done my job. And it's like, that's exactly how I feel. And it's it's just such an empowering point, I think, to make, and to hear you articulating your way, and Beth, and just this idea of that we're passing it. Yeah, I think we're there, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. It's passing it down.
Something that would be wonderful to explore would be what would happen in an adult, in a professional choir, if somehow one could allow an adult, a professional singer, to step into the shoes of the conductor and have the same kind of culture that the choristers in your past have had. When you're teaching children and you're dealing with children, there's a certain closeness to experimentation that every child feels. And as you grow into an adult, you shed a lot of that, and you become a certain way, and you develop a certain set of protections around yourself. And to ask a professional singer to step out in front of the choir and to take it for 5 minutes would be to cast the most extremely frightening pall on everybody else. And it would be very, very interesting to begin to explore in an adult, even a college choir, to allow them to find their voice. And maybe that's an area that some of you youngsters who are proteges of Tom and Rebecca, and of this marvelous idea of being the best you can be and having that be leadership and creativity, to actually open that up so that becomes a much more natural process for the culture of church choirs and the culture of professional choirs and college choirs, because it seems to me to be the way that we become the best we can be, is to free people, to allow them to explore their creativity and to open that up for them. That's an area that that I bet is going to open up for a lot of people because of Tom, and because of your vision, and because of your crystallizing some of this thinking into a way of presenting it to young people, so that they not only understand it, they live it, they are it. And that's extremely exciting to me.
Well, thank you so much, June. It just means a lot to hear that. And I will say, in another, if there were a sequel to this, maybe at some point we'll do a 2.0 or whatever, Zoom the next, whatever. I would love, and I did have here some simple games and activities, collaborative rehearsal techniques that foster, and so maybe that would be getting into some of the, because I've done a little bit of kind of experimentation with what you're talking about with my church choir, for example, and and when I was teaching at Taft School, which is a high school where it just was very countercultural. I mean, none of this stuff. They were like, "Why you want me to connect?" Like, it was not. That was not what was like. That was they were not. That's not how they roll. So, but I managed to find a few little things, and I'm like, Tony, all right, you're the leader now, Tony. And so you're just going to show us what dance move we're going to do. As we sing the second verse of This Little Light of Mine, whatever you do, we do. That sort of thing. And that people, if you present it as a game and you kind of gradually warm them up to it, and they're like, yeah, you're actually, you realize you're leading the choir now. That conducting is not necessarily, well, I know how to beat a 4/4 pattern. If you're like, okay, well, you get up in front and conduct, Tony's just gonna be like, you gotta be kidding me. What are you talking about? But Tony's willing to, this kind of thing. And so you kind of incrementally, and then it's as I think Van sometimes would say that it's a step by step thing that you can't suddenly go from 0 to 60 without those steps. I can't remember in which of the inspiring sessions where Van was imparting his wisdom, but I do remember him saying something along those lines about you just you have to meet people where they're at. And so I think it was actually with literacy. We were talking about literacy, and he was just like, yeah, you can't come in and the first day be like, okay, all we're going to do is sight reading. All you're going to do is sight reading. They have to love what they're doing. They have to experience making music and singing. And that's the carrot, you know, that they're not going to want to sight sing for its own sake. Nobody would, you know, that's no, you know, they have to feel and be excited about, you know, about the music. So I think Tony was like, yeah, I'm cool to, you know, this is kind of fun. Actually, I'm enjoying this song. You know, this is great. I'm just having a good time. And I don't mind this attention, you know, this is fine if it's like playing follow the leader, you know, but basically that's kind of conducting is kind of follow the leader. It's you know what I mean? Like, so we're going to get louder now. We're going to grow, you know, now we're going to, you know, that kind of thing. And at Taft, the one thing that I'll just throw out there was the class clown. That's the key. That was the key for me, was winning over the class clown, kind of toying, you know, having a teasing relationship with the class clown. You get the class clown on your side. The class clown, you sort of, you know, you don't humiliate them, of course, but you harness the power of their peer pressure and of their sort of, that they're the coolest cat on the block, and that, you know, that everybody looks to them to see how they're responding to different things. If you can manage to, and I'm like, okay, all right, TJ, all right, why don't you, yeah, you come on out, you know, TJ, not TJ from yesterday, but, you know, whatever, whoever the person's name, I can't remember the kid's name at the moment, it doesn't matter, but, you know, that I was just like, oh, you come up here, yeah, oh, you can't do it, you're afraid, you know, no. You know, I know you can do this. Come on, it's not hard. Look, you can raise your hand up and, you know, show him, take a breath, you know, whatever. And then he does it, and everybody's laughing, and he's kind of like poking fun at the situation and himself, and he's sort of insulting me a little bit here and there. But I'm just I'm just dishing it right back at him. But we have a very sort of, hopefully, in a sense, safe. I'm making him feel safe, but just a little bit uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? It's like that again. It's that balance of like surfing, that you're like enjoying it, but you're like afraid you might drown at the same time. So that it's finding that balance, because if all they're looking at is I'm going to drown, they're not going to get up on the surfboard. But if they're like, you know, this is kind of cool, all of a sudden the director, you know, Mr. Brand has usurped his, you know, he has relinquished, you know, the baton and the podium. He's basically said, all right, Andy, you're in charge now. You can do whatever you want. You know, then all of a sudden, that's like the class clown's dream right there. And I know, because that was me, you know, back in the day. So anyway, that just, you know, sort of an aside. But yeah, knowing that we need to wrap up, I don't know if anybody has a closing comment that they're just sort of like feeling like, gosh, I just got to say my piece here. It might be you, Rachel. I don't know, because we haven't heard too much from you, but you're there sort of nodding, smiling, and occasionally looking aghast. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, my brain is going in about 5,000 different directions right now. So there are so many things that I could talk about, and so many things that like are so relevant to me and where I am in my life right now. I'll go, I guess, briefly in kind of like chronological order as sort of the beneficiary of being one of those students who you let kind of flounder and take control a little bit. Because I feel like when I was kind of coming of age in Elm City was around the time when you were expanding the student leadership to a level that it had not previously existed at. And so having that, and not only like having it inspire myself in my path to becoming, or, you know, in pursuing conducting for a living, but also like watching that same leadership development in like my friends who went on to do other things, and seeing them take those nuggets and those pieces of wisdom and value into whatever else they're doing is so inspiring. Yeah, so that, I mean, having those experiences was extremely life-changing, and I'm, you know, constantly being forced to come to terms with them and reevaluate as I have my own choirs in my own places with culture, and just having two very completely different cultures at the schools that I teach at. One at Mount Holyoke, where like the student leadership in terms of non-musical elements is extremely strong, and students are always looking to take responsibility and to oversee logistics, and it's like at a level that like I have not seen in a while. Whereas like I have like, but they're not necessarily like musically willing to take that risk. Whereas Connecticut College, it's kind of just a blank slate. So I feel like I've been spending so much time at both schools trying to create that space of culture and kindness, and realizing how much vulnerability it takes from myself as a leader, and how scary that is to kind of put yourself out there. And so like, I think that kind of addressing that elephant in the room, like with yourself, also like with your singers is something that is like, oh, like you feel scared too, and you feel these fears, and it allows this kind of connection that is a lot more casual, I think, and in a way that kind of makes people feel comfortable. So I'm really working on that comfort, and I'm excited to bring more of the challenge element into it.
Thank you. Yeah. So, just, yeah, very, very, very inspired by you, Rachel, and proud of everything you're doing, and just feel almost like Simeon when he sings the Nunc Dimittis or something. You know, like my work here is done. You know, I can die a happy person because you know, I've seen the light. You know, kind of a thing of just that. You know, because you're carrying the torch. You know, and you know, and yeah, you're absolutely right. You were in that place at that time when it was like, we were like, yeah, this is a thing. And Rachel, you know, you were kind of the first of a generation, you know, to start as young as you did. And I think, and Rachel, some of you know this, but I mean, Rachel conducted the Augusta Reed Thomas, what was it? Not Kiss Me, Sky Candy Spouting Violets, which is like pretty much the most complex, challenging piece like we've ever done. Like it's one of the hardest pieces I've ever done in any ensemble. It was like really, really challenging. And I was supposed to conduct it, but I took that piece, and then Rebecca had the other piece, and we were recording this for the Symphony Orchestra at New Haven Symphony Orchestra. And it was, you know, it was a really big deal. You know, the project was a big deal. And Rachel did an incredible, you know, I was like, yeah, Rachel can totally, you know, do at least as an effective job with this as I can. And I would chip in a few, you know, 2 cents here and there or whatever. But basically it was, you know, I think I helped with some of the preparing, you know, toward the beginning or whatever. Then I just basically literally passed the baton over to Rachel. She conducted it in the performance, in the recording sessions, and did a lot of the rehearsal, you know, preparation as well. And that was a successful experiment. I feel like, I mean, that sort of paved the way. And I was like, yeah, I mean, if Rachel can handle it, you know. No, it was, I mean, that in itself was very, very inspiring but you were, by that point, you were pretty experienced, I think, right?
I was a senior in high school, but I think the first time I ever got up in front of like UGC Cheshire was quite literally like Bridget had to like take a chorister out to like the parking lot to like meet their parents or something. And she was like, okay, you take over the rainbow. I was like 13, 14. I was like, okay, I'm conducting now.
Yep. No, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. You're in there riding the wave, and it's, you know, there's no going back. Thank you.
Tom, can we get your notes? Can you send?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay.
Including, I'll sort of edit down a little bit so that it's, you know, understandable or whatever. Because some of it is just.
Don't edit.
You want the raw. Okay, yeah, I'll send you everything. I mean, I'll keep it PG-13, you know, but it's, you know, well, we already hit the OSM, so.
Tom, if you want to send it to me, then I can send it out to everybody.
Yeah, that's great. That'd be great.
Cool.
I can do that. I mean, actually, I know where all of you live except for Rebecca Wood, and actually, I think you live in Vermont, Rebecca. So. And Vermont, there's only a few people in Vermont. There's a lot of cows and a lot of cheese and stuff and maple syrup, but not that many people. So I could probably find you, especially because I know Jesse. I could find Jesse, but yeah, absolutely. I'll send it to you, Jesse, and I'll who knows? I would actually, you know, I don't know, somehow. I know your Forward Voices series is about 3/4 of the way over. There are some other really exciting things coming up. So I do encourage any of you who sort of were hooked into this through my having reached out and cajoled you into joining for this session. Check out, you know, the other offerings that are coming up, because there's some really cool stuff that I think might be of interest. But you know, after this series is over and done and you've come up for air or whatever, Jesse, you know, I'd love to, you know, either in a similar context, if you do the, you know, Forward Voices 2.0 or, you know, whatever, or just informally, I would love to listen more and talk less, you know, the next time, and maybe get into a little more of the nitty gritty of, you know, some of the specific techniques that can help to, you know, to what's the word, facilitate this, you know, process.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here, Tom, and for, you know, shedding light on this and giving your expertise, and certainly to see, you know, Rachel and Leah and Beth, and June and Rebecca. It's so good to see you all, and I'm so glad that you all could make it. Seriously, if you have, you know, any questions or anything you'd like, you know, to ask Tom further, if you don't have his contact, please let me know and I can jet it over to him. So Tom, thank you so much again for this incredibly inspiring talk. It's always really nice to hear from you, of course. And yeah, we'll be in touch. Maybe we could do a 2.0 session. That would be,
that would
awesome.
be so much fun. Jesse, thank you again for including me, and it really has been an honor. And thank you all for attending today and contributing, and for your extra time. Much appreciated. Peace to everyone. Be well.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. You all.